It's a good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew a version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us on my quest to brew the magic world. As always, that deck list is going to be down in the description for you below, as well as I really appreciate it if you can interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, but consider checking out those links down in the description. I'd really appreciate it. But today, celebrating Marvel, the Marvel Secret Lair Super Drop is here. 5 Secret Lairs celebrating 5 different legendary creatures from the Marvel Universe. And today we're looking at Cap, Captain America First Avenger, a Jeskai, red, white, and blue soldier hero 4/4 with the throw ability. So for 3 mana, we can unattach an equipment from Cap, and he deals damage for that equipment's mana value divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 targets. And then catch, at the start of combat on your turn, you get to bring an equipment back to Cap, kind of simulating that shield throw. There's a couple things I want to mention here off the rip about Cap. What I think is really cool is that red, white, blue is not the normal way that Jeskai is shown on a mana value in a card, so it is cool that they changed it to red, white, and blue just for Cap. And I have to say, I think this design is really interesting. Being able to throw an equipment, right, deal some damage. I like that you can do it to anything and you can divide it as much as you want. And then it's cool to get that at the beginning of combat on your turn to have it come back, because there's ways that we can take advantage of that ability in a lot of ways. So I think Cap's really cool. Of course, equipment are going to matter, and there's some big mana value equipment that we want Cap to sling. We're going to talk about that. We'll talk about ways to make equipment cheaper to equip. Remember that Cap doesn't have to throw during combat at all by any means. We can also throw multiple times as long as we can get equipment onto Cap. And there's a lot of ways that we can make equipment cheaper and or free. So we're going to talk about how we can do that. We'll talk about how we can make Cap's damage hit harder. There's a lot of ways we can do that in these 3 colors. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to talk about ways to specifically reduce the cost of throw so we can try to throw multiple times per turn for cheaper. I think that's where this deck is really going to thrive, is trying to throw multiple times per turn and really doling out that damage. Well, I think if you've seen anything online about Cap up to this point, you've seen the card to the right, because it seems like the best one for Cap to use, and that's Excalibur, Sword of Eden. This is a 12 mana equipment that costs X less to cast, or X is the total mana value of historic permanents you control. Hopefully we can get Excalibur as cheap as possible when we go to cast it. It gives the equipped creature plus 10 plus 0 in Vigilance, which is a massive buff. And remember that if we can get Cap unblockable, which is possible with equipment, that could be the difference between commander damage and not commander damage. But here is a 12 mana equipment that Cap can throw, dealing at least 12 damage, if not more, right? Once we talk about our other abilities. I think this is probably the single best equipment that we can use to throw with Cap. But that doesn't mean it's the only one. Things like Argentum armor is pretty cool. Now you're hitting somebody for 6. It'll come back to Cap, giving him +6/+6. Then when he attacks, you destroy target permanent. That is a brutal ability, especially when you can start picking off the things that you don't want your opponents to have, right? Now you can really take advantage of that. Embercleave is a card I really love. 6 mana for an equipment. So again, 6 damage for Cap, but gives Cap double strike and trample, meaning Cap's going to hit really hard in combat. Cap is only a 4/4, but now he's a 5/5 with double strike and trample at minimum, and that becomes tough for our opponents to deal with, especially if we're earlier in the game or we're trying to go after, commander damage on somebody. I think Cap does best as a Voltron deck, but we kind of get to not look like one with all the other extra stuff that we're going to get. But we always have that threat of Cap as a Voltron commander to risk our opponents. Grafted Exoskeleton seems really fun, and probably one that's going to get some groans from some people. It says equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has Infect. Well, we don't want to throw Grafted Exoskeleton. We want to keep Grafted Exoskeleton on Cap, because it turns Cap's damage into Infect, which, remember, players only need to take 10 Infect damage to lose the game. Now, slinging anything at a player could become a big problem. And remember, we have ways in the deck to do either double or triple the amount of damage we can do, meaning the Grafted Exoskeleton sitting on Cap is a massive, I'll use the meme, Avengers level threat that our opponents have to deal with. Otherwise, they're in a lot of trouble if you let Exoskeleton sit out and it just sits on Cap, because Cap's going to end the game very quickly with the ways we can potentially throw more than once in a turn. Remember, with Cap's ability to split that damage, What could happen once we get to our damage modifiers is, let's say I fling Hexbreak Wallbreaker, which sits next to it, which is 6 mana, right? So I'm doing to deal 6 damage. Well, I choose all 3 of my opponents. Let's say I do 2 to each of them. If I triple that, I'm now dealing 6 to each of my opponents with potentially Infect or somewhere else. Even without it, now you're starting to realize just the gravity of what even a few damage can do as you shotgun it out to your opponents. Hexbreak Wallbreaker is a pretty fun one. I apologize, that's 5, not 6, so my bad on the math there. But it has for Mirrodin, when it comes in, you get a token that this attaches to. The equipped creature gets +2/+2, and it says when the creature attacks, if it's the first combat phase of this turn, untap each creature, and there's an additional combat. This is really nice because Cap gets his return ability twice, right? Once on this combat and once on the next combat, meaning we could potentially cheat a couple good equipment to Cap so he can get into combat and do his job, get to fighting and get the damage in. Cauldron Complete has living weapons, so it's going to come in with a 0/0 germ token that Cauldron attaches to. Cauldron Complete has Indestructible, and it says the equipped creature has +5/+5 in First Strike, Trample, Indestructible, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a creature, you exile that creature. This is a great ability because First Strike and Trample are certainly great keywords. Indestructible is pretty great. Haste is pretty great. And then if someone has an indestructible creature that tries to block our indestructible creature, well, they get exiled at the end of combat. So this is really nice, or when the damage is dealt. Cauldron's really great, and the fact that we could try to cheat this to Cap, because remember, you don't have to throw, right, to get Cap's return ability. You could just return to Cap at the start of combat. So you could start to see where some of this equipment gets really great when you don't have to pay the cost, right, to get it to Cap. It's just going to come to Cap. And I think that's where equipment decks in particular shine, is they have a lot of these ways to cheat that as much as possible so that you don't have to spend the money to actually use these equipments. You just have to spend the mana, right, to play them. Mjolnir, Stormhammer, it's kind of funny that we can attach Cap with Mjolnir. Now, this isn't Thor's Mjolnir. This is Mjolnir from the Assassin's Creed universe. But when it enters the battlefield, you get to attach it to a legendary for free. So this is nice because it can just auto-equip right to Cap. Whenever the equipped creature attacks, you get to tap a target creature defending player controls and put a stun counter on it. Then Mjolnir deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of tapped creatures that opponent controls. What I like about Mjolnir isn't just that you get to tap something down, maybe tap down their blocker you want them to block with the least, is you can punish decks that are really trying to tap out and attack with their creatures, or tap their abilities tokens, or tap their creatures for mana. Because now Mjolnir can pick on them specifically, and it deals damage to all of your opponents. So it's not like it's just to them. Mjolnir can spread some big damage around, and that's before we even talk about the combat, right? Before we even get Cap in combat and deal with things, and I really like that. Nazgul Battle Mace says the equipped creature has Menace, Death Touch, Annihilator 1. So whenever the creature declares an attack at a player, that player has to sack a permanent. And whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent, we get to get that back under our control unless they pay 3 life. So here's a great equipment that feels good on Cap, giving it Menace and Death Touch. Going to pair really well with Trample or First Strike or any other thing that we can use for our other equipment. And then, well, now multiple combats where Cap getting into combat can be a threat to somebody, because now they have to start sacrificing things and we may be able to take them. Sword of Feast and Famine is a classic equipment, giving the creature +2/+2 and protection from black and from green. And whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card and we untap all lands we control. It's important that it has to be combat damage, so Cap's first ability will not make Sword of Feast and Famine go off. But once you watch Feast of Famine go off once or twice, you start to see how good Feast of Famine is, forcing the discard and then untapping all your lands, meaning you can play more equipment, leave up protection, play an extra combat spell, and there's a lot of things you can do with that mana once you untap them. Well, it's not just about playing the equipment. I think it's also about caring about equipment, because I think that's the other thing that equipment decks do so well at, is that you're not just playing these fun swords. That cards care about these swords being there. So you have things like Bruenor Battlehammer that lets us pay 0 rather than the first equip cost we'd activate each turn. This will give us an extra equip to Cap, right? Remember, Cap just goes off at the start of combat, and that doesn't count as an equip. So the first time we try to equip a legendary or an equipment each turn, we get it for free. And Bruenor gives each creature we control with an equipment attached to it +2/+0 for each equipment, meaning Cap could get very big, right? Depending on how many equipment we have. Dalakos is like a mini mana rock. It can tap for 2 to play artifact spells or help equip, which is really nice. But says equipped creatures we control have flying and haste. This could potentially put Cap in the air and make Cap more of a threat if our opponents don't have flying blockers to deal with Cap. Ivor battle ready, vigilance and haste, and whenever Ivor attacks, it deals damage equal to the number of equipment we control to each opponent. Really spread that damage out. Remember that when we have things that affect the amount of damage we're doing, that's going to get hard for our opponents to deal with. Why not have, we may not have the Thunder God, but we do have a God in Halvar, God of Battle. Creatures we control that are enchanted or equipped have double strike, so that's get all of our creatures, and that's really good. But I think one of the better abilities, that not only just that, is its bottom ability, which is going to help us with Cap's ability, which is the beginning of each combat. We can attach a target or equipment attached to a creature you control to another creature we control. The way this is nice is when we get into combat, when we first go into combat, Cap's going to put his trigger on the stack, right, to bring an equipment back to him. What I really like about Halvar in this sentence is what we can do is take advantage of throwing let's say we throw a equipment in response to that with Cap's ability. We have Halvar go off first, taking another equipment that's attached to somebody else and attach it to Cap. Captain can then throw again, and then we bring an equipment back. We can really take advantage of those triggers on the stack and getting a bunch of damage out while still getting the equipment we want back on Cap, and that's really important. Cassandra Eaglebearer, when it comes in, we get to go get the Spear of Leonidas, the legendary equipment, and put it on the battlefield. So Cap can potentially have a equipment for free as soon as he comes down. And then whenever a creature we control with a legendary equipment attached to it deals combat damage to a player or draw a card, a lot of our equipment is legendary. So Cassandra's inevitably is going to end up being a way to draw us a bunch of cards. Kellen the Fey-Blooded on the sorcery side has a little bit of a tutor, allowing us to go into our library and get any equipment we want and putting it into our hand. It's a great ability, allowing us to get the things we really want. And then on its regular creature side, he's a double striking 2/2 with each other creature we control gets +1/+0 for each equipment attached to Kellen. So the more equipment we put on Kellen, all of our creatures grow for it. And that can become a threat to our opponents. It may not just be just Cap or just Kellen they have to worry about. Now they have to worry about a board full of creatures that are getting a buff in that scenario. SRAM's going to draw us a card every time we cast an equipment, or in this case, just an equipment. And then Mantle of the Ancients is kind of a fun one. So let's say someone finds a way to destroy all of our equipment. Mantle of Ancients can come in, return any number of equipment cards that could be attached to the creature we're enchanting with Mantle of Ancients, just brings them all back. And then the creature that's enchanted gets +1/+1 for, in this case, each equipment attached to it. This is great because if someone tries to, get rid of any of our equipment, but let's say we have to discard our equipment for some reason, or they get destroyed, Mantle can just bring them all back, and now our opponents have to deal with, for 5 mana, us bringing a bunch of equipment back from our graveyard and just bringing it on to Cap or another creature for big damage. Arden works really well with Cap, because at the beginning of our combat on our turn, we can attach any number of equipment we want to target permanent. So we can just attach all of our equipment to Cap, and if we had enough mana, we could just start slinging them at the start of combat to deal damage to our opponents. A Bureau Headmaster is going to reduce the cost of casting equipment and equipping them by 1. Codsworth from the Fallout decks is pretty cool, giving our commander Ward 2. Taps for 2 mana to spend to cast equipment spells. And then we can tap Codsworth at sorcery speed to attach an equipment to a creature. And that's pretty cool, getting around the cost of those equip spells. I think the most popular free equip outlet that most players think of when they think of equipment is Pure Steel Paladin. It says whenever an enchantment comes into our control, we draw a card, but it says that they have equip 0 as long as we control 3 or more artifacts. As long as we have 3 or more artifacts, all of our equipment, we use their equipment speed, or equipment ability costs 0. Or we can only equip at instant speed, or at sorcery speed, but still, for free is a huge deal. Because that means we can equip them all to Cap for free, and then if we then use the mana to sling them, right, or do things with them, you could start to see, I think, why that makes a real difference. We're playing a couple of classes in the deck. Blacksmith's Talent comes in and makes a sword equipment, which is equip creature gets +1/+1 and equip 2. It's a mana value of 0, so it's not really something we want to sling with Cap, but it's just another piece of equipment that can count for other things. Level 2 is at the beginning of combat on our turn. We get to attach target equipment you control up to 1 target creature you control. Again, here's another way to load things onto our big attackers every turn. And then level 3 gives all equipped creatures double strike and haste, so not bad either, right? Allowing us on our turn to have these nice attackers that are going to deal big damage. Fighter class, when it comes in, search your library for equipment and put it into your hands. There's another way to get the ones that we want. A great way to go get Excalibur, because I think it's the one we want the most for the purposes of Cap's ability. Level 2, when we pay it to level up, lets us just equip for 2 less. And then level 3 says whenever a creature we control attacks, up to 1 target creature blocks it this combat if able. It's really nice sometimes to pick what your opponents have to block something with, so we can make sure that we either get something out of the way or get to maximize our damage. Inventory Management is a card that is going to look really good and really weird at the same time when you read it, but I think the first time you play it in an actual scenario, you'll understand how good it is. At split-second speed, meaning that your opponent cannot respond to it unless with a very small amount of other abilities. For each Aura equipment you control, you get to just attach it to any creature you want. I think the best use case for inventory management is you take an attack, your opponent's block, maybe you have a couple of creatures getting through unblocked. Inventory management, change everything all around. Maybe your opponents tried to block to trade, or they tried to block to chump block some of your creatures, give the ones that are getting blocked. Maybe your equipment would trample. You just get to just take all your equipment, spread them out however you want, and I mean, it's going to work out well in your favor when you can do that while you're already in combat where you normally couldn't otherwise. Forge Anew says when it enters the battlefield, you can return an equipment from your graveyard back to the battlefield. Not even back to your hand, you get it just right back to the battlefield. As long as it's our turn, we can equip at instant speed. This works really well with Pure Steel Paladin, right? Because now we can just equip for free anytime we want to. And then we can pay 0 rather than the first equip we do each turn. So that very similar to that Bruner ability, where the first time each turn, we get to do it for free. And that's nice, again, because then we don't have to pay that mana for that first time. And then a great choice for Cap's Secret Lair is Sigarda's Aid, which is shown here as Captain America's Aid. I love that we get to see Falcon as well on this one with Cap as Captain America's Aid. But it says you can cast equipments as though they had flash, so at any time, instant speed. And then whenever an equipment comes in, we get to attach it for free. A great ability for 1 mana, and Sigarda's Aid is a staple for most equipment decks, and a great card you want to see all the time, if we can. Okay, we beat equipment to death. Let's get into the more red side of the deck, the more fun side of the deck. Let's talk about damage modifiers. This is where this deck can shine, and there's a lot of fun ways to take advantage of this. I think the thing that makes the most sense to me is, because it's a newer card, is the card over there on the right, City on Fire. This is an 8-mana enchantment, very big, but you can convoke it, meaning you can tap your creatures to help pay for it. And it says if a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage instead. Remember that Cap does not have to attack to use his abilities. He doesn't have to be untapped. So you could tap a Cap to help pay for City on Fire, and as long as you have enough mana, you could still throw. And tripling damage is going to help a ton when it comes to getting damage through to either creatures, because remember Cap can hit any target with his damage, or just hit players. A card that about halfway through the brew that I had kind of started thinking about, that I realized works really well, is Torolf, God of Fury. This is a god from Kaldheim, kind of like Halvar. It says whenever a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls is dealt excess non-combat damage, Torolf deals damage equal to the excess to any target other than the permanent. This is going to seem kind of odd. Let me put it this way. Let's say Cap throws that Excalibur at a creature, and that creature's a 1/1. Well, 12 damage would get dealt to that 1/1, and it only needed 1 damage to be killed. So that 11 damage, Torolf says, hey, you pick another target, and I'm going to sling that 11 damage at that other target. Well, I think you could start to realize with the card sitting next to it, that if I have any modifications for that damage, that is now going to get increased. And it is just going to get bigger until I nail a player with it. Now, players, to my knowledge, can't get dealt excess damage. Because remember that in this sense, Torolf actually cares about just creatures and planeswalkers, but I don't think that you can hit a player with excess damage. I could be wrong on that. But I think what Torolf looks really good for is hit a creature, hit another creature maybe, as this damage is just compounding, and then nail a player with it. Or let's say I'm in that scenario where I have City on Fire and Torolf out, right? I sling the Excalibur at a 1/1. City on Fire would actually deal 36 damage to that creature instead of 12. Well, 35, right, was the excess. Now I go to sling that at a player. Now I times that, or even if I double it, you could start to see how this exponential can just get out of hand. Yes, this is 12 mana worth of permanence that I need out to do that. But it goes to show you that when you start combining these fun interactions together, Cap can sling a lot of damage. Now, mind you, City on Fire doesn't care about being non-combat damage like Torolf does. So Torolf won't just, if you hit a creature with, if you hit a creature with combat damage, it won't keep going. But I think you can start to see why Torolf works really well. Torolf also just has an equipment on the backside. It's not very important, but if you needed it, it's there. And then Jeska, Thrice Reborn, a very popular commander because it says that enters the battlefield with a loyalty counter on it for each time you've cast your commander from the commands on this game. It could be your commander, but we're not doing the here. The ability we really care about is this first one. We can pay 0 and choose a creature until our next turn. If that creature would deal combat damage to one of your opponents, it deals triple damage to that player instead. Yes, this may seem like a non-bow, right? Because Cap's throw ability isn't combat damage. But the thing I like about Jeska is, okay, we have so many equipment in this deck that give trample, that give flying, that give other abilities that I think Cap most of the time is going to be able to get in combat and deal damage to our opponents. And if they do, it is going to hurt. Remember, you only need 21 commander damage to knock a player out. So if Cap can clear the way with all of his equipment and all this damage and hit a player open with Jeska out on board, you're going to deal a ton of damage. And I think it's worth having that interaction around. This title is apparently, this slide is apparently mistitled, but that's okay. This is how we're going to talk about reducing the cost of Cap's ability. And there's 2 cards we can use to do it. The first is Zerta the Dawnwaker. It says abilities you activate that aren't mana abilities cost 2 less. This effect can't reduce it to less than 1 mana, and that's the same for both of these cards. They both have that effect. So this is going to take Cap's throw ability and bring it down to 1 mana. Just 1 mana. Believe me, that's well worth it. And then Zerta can tap to make a creature not be able to block this turn. It's not terribly relevant, but it could be. But the point is, reducing his throwdown from 3 mana to 1 can be a really fun combo with something like Pierce to Paladin that can just keep reattaching that equipment for free, and we just keep slinging it. I think if you get one of these out, and we have 2 of them in the deck, if you can get one of them out, you can just start slinging your equipment at people or creatures or whatever you want to do and take real advantage of this interaction. I think with one of these 2 out is where Cap is really going to shine, and you're going to get to see him do a ton of damage. Again, 1 mana apiece feels really good, and then as soon as you pair it with something where equipment equips for free, you can start to see where Cap is going to become a machine gun, just slinging out damage. But at the end of the day, no decks are ever perfect, right? This is my version 1.0 run of Cap. I think Cap's a good deck, but it could learn a lot in testing, which is mainly, do we need ways to cheat out more equipment? Do we need ways to deal more damage? And 2 of the cards on this screen are for that. Armored Skyhunter on the left is, do we need more ways to cheat out equipment? When it attacks, we can look at the top 6 and put an equipment from among them on the battlefield. And if it's put on the battlefield this way, you can attach it to a creature we control. So here's a way to cheat out equipment. Skyhunter didn't make the deck just because I honestly couldn't find a slot for it. I really liked the card. I just didn't know what to do. I wanted to make sure we had enough redundance of some of our other effects that we can make sure we get them out all the time. Gratuitous Violence says if a creature we control would deal damage to a permanent player, deal double that damage instead. So here's another doubler, right? Another way to make Cap's damage more. I think we have a couple doublers in the deck. It's not like it's just City on Fire, but I guess the question is, do we need more? And I think Gratuitous Violence would be a good card to look at for that. And then Curiosity, I think, makes a ton of sense, but it's the same issue as Skyhunter, where I just couldn't find a spot for it. You enchant a creature, and when the creature deals damage to an opponent, you can draw a card. This is a way to basically put this on Cap. Whenever Cap slings an equipment at an opponent, you're drawing a card. It feels right. Believe me, the card feels right. But we are playing other ways to draw cards. We are playing cards that draw you cards when you deal damage to an opponent in combat, which I think is going to happen a lot as well, which is the reason I didn't include Curiosity. But I'm sure I'm going to get at least one comment in this video that's like, Curiosity's free, why aren't you doing it? I understand, I get it. But at the end of the day, sometimes the ratios matter more than specific cards, and I think that's what I was after more than Curiosity specifically. But let's get into our playtest. Keeping a 3-lander with Sword of Feast and Famine, Sunforger, an equipment I didn't talk about, but is very good. Equips for 3, gives creature +4/+0, and we can attach it for a red and a white to go search our library for a red or white instant with mana value 4 or less, and can cast it for free. Sunforger is a staple of any equipment deck that has red and white in it. It's very good at what it does. And we have that Dalekos. We have a nice start. We draw, Flare of Fortitude is a protection spell. It can prevent our life total from changing and give all our permanents hexproof and indestructible for 4 mana, or we can sacrifice a non-token white creature to play it for free. We draw Winged Words, an equipment that can give a creature flying and ward 4 a right way to protect. I don't see a turn 2/1 play no matter what, right? So I think I'll just put the Sundown Pass in tapped again. I don't see a turn 1 play, so I'd rather kind of just pass it up for now. Turn 2, we can get the Winged Words in. I don't think there's anything better to do on here turn 2, so let's just do that. It does equip for 1, which is nice. Turn 3, we'll get the planes down, so we do have enough to play Cap. We also could play Dalekos. I think it makes more sense to play Cap, because at the start of combat, we can put Winged Words on it, right, with his catch ability. And then he has flying and ward 4, so now he's protected, at least hopefully, till our turn. Ward 4 is a massive cost that a lot of people would have to pay to remove Cap here. Coming to turn 4, we drew Key to the Vault, an equipment that says when the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you look at that many cards from the top of your library, and we get to pick a non-land one and just cast it for free. This is a great equipment to just start casting things for free and getting big things out. We see the Wall Breaker there. I love Key to the Vault, and I think what makes the most sense here is, do I have double blue? I don't, so I can't play Dalekos and Key to the Vault, right? And I do really want to play Key to the Vault, because with Cap being in the air, I feel like he has a great chance of getting damage in this turn. So I'd probably pay Key to the Vault, go to the combat, we'll get Key to the Vault on Cap. And I mean, I feel like on turn 4, there's a solid chance Cap can get into the air at somebody for free here. So we'll look at the top 4. It says pick a non-land card, and we can cast it for free. We can cast Legion Leadership, but unfortunately, it's not going to do me any good after we've already done combat. So I think we did whiff on that Key to the Vault. But that's okay. It really stinks to lose all those lands. That's okay. It's okay. I think we'll be okay no matter what. And that just means hopefully Key to the Vault can get us in a better spot next turn. But, of course, we didn't draw land because we just nuked 3 of them. But that's A-okay. I think it probably makes the most sense to sort of Feast and Famine, right? Move to combat. We'll attach it to Caps. And now Caps is 6/6 in the air. Protection from black and from green. I still feel like we have a good attack here. Take the attack. Again, I have a tough time believing we won't hit somebody for 6 here. So let's look at the top 6. Soul Ring, Lizard Blades. There's Jeska. Jeska might not be bad here, right? With Cap being maybe unblockable at this point, with him being in the air, right? Jeska could be a good one. I also like Soul Ring to give us more mana. Lizard Blades could give Cap double strike, making it hit even harder, and Key to the Vault going off twice per turn. So I think there's a lot of options here, right? The question I'd ask myself is, we played sort of Feast Famine this turn, right? So we got 1 mana left. If I bring down Soul Ring, what would I do with it? I guess play Sunforger this turn. If I bring down Jeska, we are basically just trying to hope Jeska stays alive until next turn. If I played Lizard's Blades down, I have to reconfigure. Because it's still a creature, so I don't think Cap can automatically attach Lizard Blades to itself. I like Sunforger, right? Would turn it into 10 next turn. It'll make it very hard to deal with, and we would unlock the Sunforger. Because remember that Feast and Famine untapped all of our lands, right? So that's the other thing to remember, is if I bring Soul Ring down, I now have 6 mana, right? Not just the 2. This is a tough decision. I like the idea of like getting like Dalekos and Sunforger down, like taking the Soul Ring. I feel like the answer is probably Jeska here, and I'm going to be wrong. But I think it's only because I think I want to get Dalekos and Sunforger down, just so that way we have an option next turn to get some more of that party started. So we'll come to the next turn. We see Caduceus, Staff of Hermes, another legendary equipment that gives the creature lifelink. And if we have 30 or more life, creature gets +5/+5 indestructible, and prevent all damage will be dealt to it. Remember that we are above 30 life right now because we started the game with 40. So Caduceus seems great. Remember, has protection from black and from green, so we could definitely still attach Caduceus. So I've got 6 mana, +8 for up to 8 with Dalekos, as long as I'm casting or using an equipment. There's a lot of options. Remember, I can only get 1 onto Cap for free. I mean, Cap now does have flying and haste because of Dalekos, so we could move, we could also move one of these over to Dalekos if we wanted to, give it flying and haste as well. But 6 mana, I mean, Argentum Armor seems great. Get it onto Cap. Now Cap's at 10, 12, 12. Make it more of a threat. I think that seems like a great idea. Now it's destroying something on attack. Now we're looking at a good portion of our library. And I think this is a fair place to stop. I think we can kind of see the thought here. It doesn't have indestructible. But other than that, we're looking at the top 12 of this turn. We probably attack the same person we attacked the last turn or two. Maybe knock somebody out this turn. Destroy something else. And unless someone wipes the board, these equipment all sit there. We can replay Cap next turn and just get this process to keep going. We could also, if somebody tried to truly wipe all artifacts, we could just Flare Fortitude and protect all the equipment. I think it's a lot of ways. Well, if we board wipe, we can't just freely cast Flare Fortitude. Well, we could, right? Because our land's untapped. I think we're in a solid spot. We could replay another equipment. I'd probably leave the Fortitude up just to protect our board. And I think this just gets out of hand. So let's get into Playtest 2. I think we've kind of demonstrated what we want to there. No lander. Okay, I don't know why Zach in planning would have kept that one, but that's a-okay. All right, a 1-lander with Soul Ring seems okay. We're going to need some other lands, but let's take a risky hand here. All right, well, it paid off. I didn't think it was going to, but we go a Plains into Soul Ring, and we will go into the Trailblazer's Boots just to get some things down. Trailblazer's Boots gives a creature non-basic land walk, so as long as a player has a non-basic land, they can't block it. So we just keep getting our colors down. This turn, we're not going to be able to get Cap down, but that's okay, because this is only going to come in untap next turn. But with 4 mana, we could play SRAM. I can't play SRAM and use Kellen's ability. SRAM doesn't seem like a bad idea to start drawing cards when we play equipment. Next turn, I think we're just going to get Cap down and auto-attach something like Trailblazer's Boots for free. So we may not even play one next turn, but I think it still makes sense to get it set up. Turn 3, we see the Caduceus. Okay, so we've got another one set up. I think we go 3 in for Cap. At the start of combat, we'll have Trailblazer's Boots automatically equipped. Now Cap gets to attack for 4. Get in, deal some damage. I like it. 2 mana left, but just nothing to do with it, so we'll move in here to the next turn. You see Argentum Armor, so we're just 1 mana off that Argentum Armor. Mithril Coat can come in and auto-attach to Cap for free, giving it indestructible. Kellen wouldn't be a bad idea here. I could go get my choice of equipment. I'm just trying to think of what is the equipment that I want. Key to the Vault, maybe? Right? Cap can't be blocked, so maybe we do that. We go get Key to the Vault. Right, we know that Cap gets to auto-equip it for free. Cap has non-basic land walk, right? So it's probably against most players at this point in the game, especially 3-color decks, going to be unblockable. I think that's important to talk about, and especially in Modern Commander where so many players are playing non-basic lands. We get that to our hand. We do still have to pay the 2 to play it, but that's okay. We get to draw a card off SRAM, so that's great. We would have paid that, maybe that, so we'd have a red or a blue up, so not able to play the swords. But hey, the Key to the Vault's going to automatically attach. Cap hits for 4, so we get to go look for something for 4. I mean, that's some good options. Lockstone Warhammer can give Trample and Lifelink. Two-Handed Axe can double Cap's power till end of turn. Arcane Signet can give us an extra mana. I kind of like the Arcane Signet just because then we can play like something like Argentum Armor next turn, or we could play Caduceus and Mithril Coat, getting them both in on Cap. I really like those 2 equipment, but I think it makes more sense to kind of hedge our bets for next turn. And then we would come into turn 5, no land, but that's a-okay. The nice part here is if I play Mithril Coat, it automatically attaches to Cap. That's going to draw us a card off of SRAM. Now I have the option for Caduceus or Sword of Feast and Famine. Remember, Sword of Feast and Famine untapped all of our lands. So that's not bad either, because then we could even like Fighter Class. After combat, I think I would sort of feast and famine, draw the cards, start a combat, auto attach from Cap. So now Cap's up to a 6/6 with indestructible, pro red green, can't be blocked, probably attack, hit somebody for 6. We drew a land there, so we could technically have played that before combat, but it did come in tap. So we're gonna look at the top 6 or non-land. So Wing Boots, Blacksmith's Talent, Codsworth. I kind of like Codsworth just to give Cap ward 2. Remember, that person's going to discard. We're going to untap all of our lands. I think I would go ahead and Fighter's Class and go get the Excalibur, just because Excaliburs might end up being free at this point. So let's think about it, right? Excalibur costs 12, and then X less, where X is the value of historic permanents. Artifacts, legendaries, and that's 3, 5, 8, 11, 12, 14. So that's 15. So Excalibur is free. I mean, there's no reason not to play it, right? Draw another card. Now we've still got a bunch of mana left out, and now Cap basically is going to have a great time. Now what we could do is, if it was 2 to play, it was free. That it was 2 to play the Cat. We've got 5 mana, so I could this turn attach the Excalibur and sling it if I wanted to. I mean, it might make sense to either do some good damage to somebody, or otherwise, that might make sense just to sling it this turn. We could always use 3 of that mana to up the sorcerer class. It would not allow us to do that this turn, but on future turns, Excalibur can now attach to Cap for free, meaning that as long as we can pay for Cap's first ability, we can just keep slinging Excalibur. And you can now start to see where this is going to get out of hand. But let me know, what do you think of Cap down in the comment section below? If Black Panther was my favorite brew for me, I think Cap is probably my favorite of all of the decks that I've brewed this week. I think it's a fun equipment deck. It does everything that equipment deck wants to do, but allows you that fun to just start slinging them, dealing big damage, doing what Cap, I think, does best. And for only $300 that I've brewed the deck at, I think it's very good bang for its buck at what it wants to do, and you could make it better with other equipment and other cards. But let me know, what do you think of Cap down in the comment section below, and I